Young Turks Ana Kasparian is catching heat for saying she has left the left.
I'm going through something very real and very sincere, and it's uncomfortable, and it has not been an enjoyable process for me. It's been difficult. And so the internet being what it is, all sorts of people from all sorts of political ideologies have theories on like what's actually happening with me, right? And the main accusation, both from the left and the right, is that I'm grifting, which is hilarious because literally nothing has changed about my work life. I'm in the same place. I have the same audience. The audience doesn't like some of what I have to say or some of the new conclusions I've come to. And so I wanted to kind of set the record straight about what I have personally experienced. I don't know what my political labels are at this point, right? Because I feel like I don't really fit anywhere. And that's just full honesty. It's, again, very uncomfortable for me. And I want to say that out of any point in my adult life, this is probably the point where I'm the most malleable and open to new information.
This comes after a transgender producer employed by the Young Turks posted a video sharing that they are leaving the network over what they say is Kasparian and co-host Cenk Uyghur's complicity in anti-LGBTQ sentiment.
Friend of the show, Alayemi Olarin, weighed in on the drama. She actually popped in on a live stream of a YouTube show called The Vanguard Boys to offer her perspective as they were covering the Ana Kasparian commentary and basically expressed some frustration that despite trying to stay out of it, she recently went on Young Turks to very patiently try to push back against some of the takes that they've had with respect to criminal justice issues. She, as a public defender, has a lot of expertise in that area and a very distinct position that was different from theirs. And she has been tried to like have constructive conversations in her view and been very cordial and polite to them. And still, she gets a lot of pushback of a less cordial nature, I think is how she would describe it. And so there was some frustration that she expressed that even though everyone has kind of gone out of their way to try to be patient with Ana Kasparian and to give her a lot of grace as a member of the community, that there was some frustration with how she's characterizing how she's being treated by the left. Whether or not you want to call it a grift or what have you.
What does grift even mean at this point? I would use that word to describe someone, I guess, who I suspect is insincerely pretending to change their beliefs for more clout or to reach a bigger audience or different audience. Maybe that applies to certain figures who are ostensibly progressive and now, they still say they're progressive, but they're, mostly talking about right-wing stuff or where they happen to agree with the right wing, maybe on trans issues or COVID or something. I don't know. I frankly don't know if this applies to Ana. It sounds like maybe she's sincerely changed her mind. I mean, she's consciously saying, I don't really associate myself with all leftist views anymore. Maybe I don't know, I've changed. I haven't significantly changed, I don't think, any of the policies I really support over the last few years, but living in a city as crime has gotten worse made me rethink, again, not like fundamentally change my outlook on criminal justice reform, but made me a little bit more inclined to go, well, maybe there's something that needs to be confronted here. It's not a grift. It's just like the experience of life. I hadn't really thought about vaccine mandates very hard for most of my life, or I would have said you should have them for schools.
I'll tell you
and now I've thought about it. Now I have a radically different view on it.
Specifically, the argument about it being a grift is this. Ana has demonstrated a really competent understanding of why it is that the left, many people on the left, think it's perfectly reasonable and even good to respect people's pronouns, to use language that acknowledges what many in the mainstream and on the right characterize as goofy, if not harmful, things like the phrase birthing people, or the most recent controversy is referring to trans men as having bonus holes instead of vaginas because of their dysmorphia. And
sorry.
Ana in the past, and I don't know if we have this clip, has articulated very clearly why, if you want to be accommodating or kind to those people, You can think dysmorphia is mental illness and characterize it however you want, but if you acknowledge that they obviously are having some dissonance with the way they were born versus how they feel that they are in a clinical setting, using language that is enabling them to get the health care they need, it's hard for me to see why anyone would have a problem with that. And Ana Kasparian has articulated that exact belief within like the last year, arguing against conservatives who would reject that kind of language. And now, without any real reckoning with that previous clip that's gone viral many times now, she has reversed course on that particular issue. And after years, I mean, Young Turks is the oldest left media institution I believe that there is, you know, a real front runner in the online media space. After years of speaking very specifically and knowledgeably about any number of criminal justice issues, with the world being what it is for all of that time, crime didn't just come anew during this time. Nothing has really changed substantively in the way of the world. A sudden decision to say, well, the left just doesn't care about victims of crime. I mean, some people make that argument and they don't know better. The left's argument isn't that it's not horrible when people are victims of crime on subways or in their communities. The left's argument isn't that we should let gun violence go unchecked because it would be bad to arrest people who murder. That's not what criminal justice reform is about. It's not what police abolition is about. It's not what any of this is about. The whole question is whether or not we can lower crime rates more effectively than throwing money at police budgets has done by addressing the root causes of the crime, right? And Ana knows that. So to know that, to have said that, to have articulated that so many times in the past, and now take a different approach where you characterize, I would argue mischaracterize what the left's agenda has been. The left agenda that you have been a part of is causing people to really wonder what's motivating that shift. And given that we live in a media climate where, like it or not, there is an enormous appetite for people who leave the left. Dave Rubin is often brought up as an example of this. People who say, I'm an independent thinker. I can't be put in a box. I'm willing to challenge the establishment. I'm really willing to challenge orthodoxies. Sometimes that's authentic and that's fine. But we also have to acknowledge that there's an appetite for that. And one wonders, given some of the struggles that all online creators have dealt with, especially in like the post kind of Bernie world on the left, whether or not there is an effort to attract a bigger audience by taking on subjects that are hot topics right now, and that the left typically has been on the less sexy side of. Yeah, I mean, you would know that better than me. It from observing it from a distance, it looks to me like whatever the Bernie wave has crested, and it's harder to draw an audience by just by talking. I mean, we can tell from the kinds of things we talk about on this. People's inability to afford rent, and their medical debt, and the cost of food, and the exorbitant cost of education. Yes, these are issues which poll as people's priorities, but which they don't seem especially interested in hearing about in a news context. Yeah, or at least on YouTube, right? I mean, sure, the model for Ana's show and for our show, and you got to talk about what the viewers are interested in. So Young Turks is hardly. I mean, there are a lot of different, very successful independent media shows that are still very supportive of trans rights and issues. So it's hardly the case, I think, that, well, if you want Young Turks to survive, they've got to go anti. Is she not supportive of trans? No, she is. She is. And the point that she's making in that clip is that she still supports people's rights to health care and to housing and all of those substantive rights, which I think is important. And I don't think it's useful to lump her in with your average. We need some middle ground language to refer to some of the requests or asks coming from activists on behalf of trans issues that to use terminology that is, again, cringe or something. The thing. That's who's not making the ask? I don't want to deride people as mentally, the conservatives will say, some conservatives, Matt Walsh, I believe, are mentally deranged. That's really mean and alienating and not true. And you shouldn't diagnose people from a distance. Right. Or also, no, we'll just say whatever anyone wants, no matter how awkward that language is. But here's the problem. One UK cancer group, I think. So not our country, and not indicative of the broader views even within that country. Mm-hmm. One group has a conversation about whether or not it would make trans men feel better to use terminology other than vagina when they don't identify as women. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, across the pond, Ana Kasparian, who ostensibly has all these other concerns as a leftist, is making that into a national case where she is saying, you don't refer to my vagina as a bonus hole, which nobody ever did, right? Like, the whole conversation is about whether or not trans men should have that term applied to them. And this really maps on to the earlier controversy she was engaged with in the spring, where she insisted that it was disrespectful to her to be referred to as a birthing woman. I think it's fine for her to articulate that she would prefer to be called a woman and not a birthing person, or whatever she prefers to be called. Ana Kasparian, God bless, whatever she wants to be called. But it is dishonest to say that someone else who wants to be called something else is infringing on your self-identification by simply talking about their own self-identification. And that's why people were upset. No one could find the human being that once referred to Ana Kasparian as a birthing person. No one could source this person who allegedly has infringed upon her rights to self-identification by insisting on her being a birthing person other than a woman. I think we can all agree that her self-identification matters, and I'm happy to, and only have, referred to her as a woman. But now she and others seem to be infringing on other people's rights to be referred to as they want to be referred to. If Jordan Peterson, who was it that said that, who claimed that being called cis is a pejorative? Was it Jordan Peterson? It was someone from that world.
Elon said they were going to not.
That's fine.
Allow. I don't know.
You know, it's difficult to. I don't know how else one refers to. You know, if you want to be called, you know, born biological man, a man, whatever.
I mean, I think the point of that was just to deny that the trans category exists.
Right, and
You're
that's the problem. And so the word cis doesn't exist because you want to stigmatize people who aren't trans or anything. But if you have a word trans and you're trying to identify, say that someone's not trans, you can say they're not trans. That's fine, I guess. But cis is just a word that means not trans.
Or you just say a woman.
Well, no. I wouldn't, because the whole point of the matter is that trans women identify as women. They describe themselves and believe that they are and feel and experience the world as women. And so they want something that there's a term,
right,
a need for a term.
Exactly.
So the war against cis is not a war against their self-identification. It's really a war against trans people's right to identify as trans. And that's really illuminating. So when someone who like Elon or whomever,
you're a man, you're a trans man, etc.
Well, no, that's like saying I have a yellow piece of paper and a white piece of paper, and I'm a paper and you're not because you're white paper. No, they're both paper, but this one's yellow and this one's white.
That's paper.
This is also
That's
paper.
Yellow paper.
This is also paper. And unless you're saying, and you have every right to say this, unless you're saying that in no way, shape, or form does anybody's identity matter, and if you're a trans woman, you're really a man, and that's a stance that a lot of people have.
You're a trans woman.
Right, but they're both paper. They're both women is the argument. They're both women. One's a cis woman and one's a trans woman.
What we're saying is we don't need really a separate category for this, which is like, you know, we would stack the papers up to the ceiling versus like 3 of those. And we're not trying to disinclude the yellow papers.
You literally are. Not you,
no,
but I'm saying
I'm not saying the yellow paper is
it's paper.
It's yellow paper.
You're dancing around trying to avoid calling this thing paper. It is paper.
Whatever. I don't care.
But that's the point. So you don't have to agree with it.
No, I'm avoiding calling this stack some other terminology here. It's just paper.
Look, I think it's evident from this hypothetical, that this example, exactly what the issue is here. So just own it. People can own Ana, whomever. I don't think Ana believes this. I don't think that she believes that trans women, well, I don't know what she believes anymore, but I wouldn't have thought that she would believe that trans women don't have the right to identify as women. If everyone respects self-identification, if the issue is Ana's ability to identify as a woman with a vagina, then it's also a trans person's right to identify as a woman with a vagina if they've post-op, or a woman with a penis, or a woman who can give birth, and all these things that I know sound silly because they go against what our understanding of the world in the sex binary has been, that we were all raised with and has been existent in some form or another in Western society since time immemorial. And I say Western society because there have been differences in different societies that have had more more sex categories than that.
I think we can accommodate without reinventing the original term, is what I would strive.
But you struggle to do that even with the example of the paper.
I don't care. I'll do whatever I'm doing for the sake of, I'm trying to present the conservative or the position.
Yeah, no, I
on this.
understand. I know you're steel manning this, and I think that's helpful, and I appreciate you doing that. But the question, like, I just want to be really clear. I don't think that Ana Kasparian or anybody in the world is wrong to have feelings about how they are described in the world. You can have that. But at a certain point, you have to acknowledge that other people's self-identification may have implications for you. If I want to identify as the greatest person on earth, you might have feelings about that if you think that you're the greatest person on earth, or maybe you think your mom is the greatest person on earth. So my self-ID is going to abut your sense of how that reflects on everybody else, right?
Right.
And so you have to make a decision. It's within your right to say, Briahna, I'm not going to call you the greatest person on earth because I don't agree with that. And that's fine. But don't pretend like that my right is still to self-identify that way. And everyone has to make a decision in a society about whether or not they want to be polite, gracious, kind to people who are in different places, and But if I meet Muhammad Ali, if I were to have met Muhammad Ali, I'm not going to be like, you're not the greatest, actually. You know what I mean? I'm going to be like, okay, with all due respect, you've done a lot. You are the greatest. I'm happy to call you that, even if in my secret heart of hearts, I actually think, Eugene Debs is the greatest or whatever. You know what I mean?
Like, what is our criteria for greatness here?
But that's the point. That's kind of the point. So I think, Ana Kasparian, please only refer to her as a woman. Please don't refer to her as having a bonus hole. And I think that we can all figure out how to live in this society together.
And I have zero interest in policing who's a leftist and who's not. It's not my movement. I don't have anything at stake. It seems to me some of the differences of opinion she's having are sincere, or she's just changing her mind. Like, it's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to no longer associate with the movement you associate with. It's not always grifting.
Sure.
And I feel like that term is getting overused.
I think that's fine. I'm just trying to point out what the argument is there. And I do think I echo some frustration from the trans community that even if there are these, is the choice to isolate a conversation that's happening in one organization across the world, coming at the expense of airtime that can be given to the fact that literally hundreds of anti-trans bills have been promulgated in the United States in this year alone. And that there is an actual effort to undermine the substantive rights of trans people, which Ana says that she cares about, and I believe that she cares about. If that is ongoing, and at a certain point you're giving so much airtime to one random organization having a thought experiment in England, then what purpose are we serving? And are people right to say that they want to step away from this organization or step away from viewing this, the Young Turks, because it's no longer reflecting their interests?
They can do whatever they want. We will have more Rising right after this.